In this video, I want to show you how I turned some old cars in a vintage garage into shots published in a magazine. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Trevor, boudoir photographer here in Toronto. And as I mentioned in the intro, I did a boudoir shoot that I've always wanted to do. For as long as I can remember, I have wanted to shoot a model with an old car with a kind of pin-up vibe and do it in a way that wasn't just a girl leaning on a car. So this is how I went about doing it, and before I get into that, I want to say a big thank you to my team who helped put this together. Christa, our model, who also arranged the location. She's just awesome. I photographed her so many times. And a big thank you to Rob, who owns the actual garage, for letting us spend a day shooting there. And of course, I cannot have done this without Jen, my makeup artist. She runs modern makeup, and when she does her thing, it's so damn good, and I just love it. And she absolutely nailed the perfect blend of a vintage look mixed in with a boudoir look, so it's awesome. I'll point out one other thing. Check the video description for all the gear I used, and make sure you follow me on Instagram. Links down in the description. As I arrived at the location, the first thing I noticed was that this site was just a two-car garage. So it's not like I was gonna have a lot of space to work with to set up the lights and to move around and shoot. But that was okay, because the main thing was that I wanted my shots of my model Christa in the car rather than out of the car and beside the car, leaning on top of the car. But that meant using some very precisely placed lights because of where the natural light was coming from. Most of the light was coming through the big garage door we had, but it was an overcast day, so the light was very even, but it was like having a big softbox off to the side. And the other notable problem about the garage door is that the light doesn't really get into the car's interior. So consequently, I had to add some additional lighting. In this case, I was using some Godox AD400s. I had my go-to 1x4 strip box with a grid, and also an 18-inch Octa with a grid as well, just to keep the light from spilling all over the place. Those two lights were there mostly for a frontal fill, but also some background rim light. On a side note, when it comes to lighting, adding shape to your light and making it look more three-dimensional really adds something to the photos. So including things like hair lights, rim lights, side lights will give your images that little extra punch and kick and wow factor. And I'm going to walk you through 3 different shots where the ambient light is coming from different directions, and then what I had to do to get those shots by adding those flashes into play. Okay, let's get to some example images, because I know that's why you're here. And in this first example image, what you're gonna see is Christa is basically facing that open garage door. So she is looking right outside in this case. Now, if we had shot this with just natural light, it probably would have been okay, maybe, but that would have just been really, really flat light, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted to give a little bit more shape to the light. So in this case, what I did is I used that gridded 1x4 softbox, and I put it over in camera left, and I overpowered the ambient light by about 1/3 to 1/2 a stop, and then exposed for the flash. This is something I do all the time in the studio, just to kind of get a really shapely light, but not something that's so direct and so overpowering that it looks too contrasty. The other thing I want to point out is the direction of that light. So if this is Christa facing straight at you, like the light isn't coming straight at her from kind of a 90-degree angle. We kind of put that light more at a 45. So I'm overpowering the ambient. That flash is lighting her up pretty well. But if you look at the side of Christa that's closest to the car, you'll notice that there are still some shadows. Now, they're very, very minimal, but they help shape her body. So we're not just getting an extremely flat light from this. And that's basically the kind of look that I love to do. All right, let's get on to the second look. And this is the one that probably was the more complicated of all the three that we did, but I really wanted a shot of Christa in the car, not outside the car. So there's no way that I was getting a decent exposure with the light coming just through the garage door. If I did that, I would be making lighting compromises all over the place. I'd either have to massively blow out highlights, plug shadows, try to recover all that stuff. So instead, I turned to the flashes to help me out in this case. So my first order of business was to get a base level exposure based on the ambient light. And that's what I was initially kind of basing my exposure on. Then I added the 1x4 strip box, and it was turned into a backlight. The light is also now, instead of being a vertical light, it's now a horizontal light, so that I could kind of light along her body, given that she's laying down in this shot. Now, that light I cranked up to be just a little bit more powerful than the ambient light. So I'm about a half a stop or so above that. And then I, on a boom, I had the other light with that 18-inch Octa with the grid, and I shot that through the window of the car because that I had to fill in the light for the front of Christa's body, because if I didn't use that other light, basically I'd have a more or less backlit shot, and that's not what I wanted. So the 18-inch Octa shot through the car window is in fact balanced to be about the same exposure as the ambient light, so it just fills in. It's just basically a fill light, but it has enough direction to it that it isn't creating things to be super flat. Plus the backlight will also help out with that. And so that 18-inch Octa is basically just over my right shoulder. And when I actually took this shot, I was shooting through the car window because I love the reflections that it created over on the right and left side. And you just kind of see Christa in between that reflection. So definitely one of my favorite shots. And I've got a few other variants to show you in just a little bit. Okay, we are on to the last look, and I wanted to show you how having that ambient light to camera right would look as if you fill in the shadows to the left with a flash. So this is another relatively simple setup. The garage door light is going to come in hard from camera right, and if we don't balance it out, it's going to create an incredibly contrasty image. Now, yes, I could turn Christa's body and face into that light, but I kind of wanted to have, I didn't want flat light, but I wanted to create a little bit of shape to this. So what I'm doing here is I'm using that strip light as a fill light, and I'm not quite overpowering the ambient light. I'm basically keeping my flash about 1/3 to a half stop under the exposure of the ambient, and I'm exposing for the flash. So effectively what I've got is I've got my flash doing the fill, and I'm keeping my background just a little bit brighter so it acts as a hair light and a rim light and all that kind of stuff. And I just love doing stuff like this because I'll still get those catch lights in the eyes, and although there is a difference in exposure, it is subtle and it creates a more three-dimensional look to Christa's face and body. And I want to highlight why I like to do this as a boudoir photographer, because in a lot of cases I want light that's flattering. I want to fill in any kind of perceived things that people would want to fix, like, you know, bags under the eyes or wrinkles on the head or something along those lines. But also I want light to accentuate certain parts of people. In this case, you look at Christa, you're only kind of seeing her from just a little bit above the waist up, but she doesn't have a very large bust. But I want to create the sense that her bust might be a little bigger than it actually is. And one of the ways I do that is I've got to emphasize that cleavage line. So one of the ways I do that is the positioning of the flash. So in this case, I've got that big light source coming over from camera right. That's cool. But if I place that light and turn her face a little bit more, and I have that flash on camera left, I can create a little shadow on her chest, which is gonna give her the perception of a slightly bigger bust line. There you have it. There's 3 looks that we did using ambient light and flashes from different directions to create these shots. We did the one shot where the ambient light's coming at Christa, we did one where it's behind her, and we did one where it's coming from the side. And before I show you a few other images from this shoot, and some before and after processing shots, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification for when I release new videos. And of course, if you have any comments, I want to hear them below. And on to the BTS and other images from our shoot.